Okay, so we've covered a lot of different things using the shape tools and the pen tools, but you'll notice there's a pencil tool, actually there, probably say pencil on yours, and you've got a brush. And these do pretty much what you would expect them to do. So a pencil will draw a line. Now as you can see, you can't see that line because you've got no line selected on your swatch. So in order to make sure you can see it, make sure you've got a colour. And then likewise you can change the thickness and the weight of the line by changing the stroke there. You can also change the type of line, so you can go into this and you can change it to width profile 1, and that will give us like a snake line, so thin to thick to thin. This one will give you a variable line, so almost like a calligraphic, like a pencil or a pen where there's pressure. And you can create different types of lines. You know, you actually make lines yourself and create them. So different types of lines, and there's also different types of finishes to the line. So you can actually have a textured finish, like a brush style, and you can use different types of things like this. Again, some of these things that are in the standard palettes aren't something I use a lot of, but you've got lots of different brush libraries to choose from. So if you wanted like artistic and you wanted, let's go for ink, and we selected the ink palette. Let's see what we get. So if we go for that one, that's the shape that we get with the ink. If we do this one, we get that. Another type of ink, another type of ink. So when you're drawing a line, and this works the same with shapes, so you can do this with your outlines of your shapes. It's just it's probably much more normal to see them put onto lines, I suppose. So you can actually create different styles of lines. So your lines don't have to be always computerized, because one thing that is looking a little bit, well, lazy, I would say, is a line that just looks like it's been drawn by a computer. So if I draw a line like that, you know, it looks like a line that's been drawn by a computer. It doesn't look particularly interesting. You can also change the sensitivity of the line tool. So or the pencil. So if I double click on the pencil, you'll see that the fidelity of how accurate it is to my mouse movements will dictate or be dictated by where this point is on this scale. So over here is really accurate. Over here, the computer smooths it out. So if I bring it all the way down here, you'll see that it'll follow my mouse. So if I've got a really shaky hand like this, it will follow my mouse wherever I go. And you can see the amount of points it's created. If I double click on that again and change it to smooth, and I've got the same shaky hand, you'll see it'll smooth it out. You see? There's not half as many points there. You'll see that there's lots of there's only a few points, 1, 2, 3, 4, as opposed to hundreds before. So I would always set it to probably smooth-ish. And obviously when you draw, you're not going to draw with a really shaky hand. You're going to draw with a fairly smooth hand like that. And you'll just end up with a better line. So fairly smooth, but not completely smooth. Also, when you've drawn a line, as well as being able to change the size of the line style here and the definition of the brush here, we can also use what's called the width shift tool, which is this one here. And this allows us to change the size of parts of the line. So if I was to click in anywhere in here and drag, I can make the thickness of this line here thick, and then I can come here and I can make it thicker, and I can come here and make it thinner. And I can make the line whatever shape I want it. So again, it becomes more organic, it becomes less computerized, it looks more natural. And certainly when you draw in illustrations and you want a outline around a character or something, you probably just don't want a simple line. You probably want a line that looks like it's got a bit more emotion in it. So you can draw your lines for a start, and then you can go to the width shift tool and just make them look different. So if we've drawn something, and we've applied a brush style. So let's apply one of these brush styles. Let's have that one. And if I want to make this fatter, I can just come in here and do this. And now that brush stroke has got a fat through to a thin. So it's got a bit more interest and certainly much more creative than if I was to just do a basic line, try and do the same line and just make it a little bit fatter. So look at the difference between that and that. Tons of differences in there. That one looks interesting. That looks like a computer drawn it. So something to think about, the width shift tool there. We've also got the brush tool, and the brush tool is very similar to the pencil tool. However, I'll show you the difference. You still use the brushes. So let's just go back to a basic up here. Didn't select it. So something there is if you don't select something, it won't be able to be changed. So just change it back, and I'll just make that a bit fatter. Okay. So paintbrush works the same way as the pencil, really, in lots of ways. I still retain that brush. Let's go back to the basic. Still doing it. Why is that doing that? Interesting. I wonder why it's doing that. I'm not quite sure. But the difference between the paintbrush and the pencil are not very obvious. But there's a lot of difference between the blob brush and the paintbrush. So if we were to paint, and I'm going to try and change it back to a basic line. Let's go basic. Still not on. Still on. I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. Let's go back. So that's okay. Still seem to remembering. I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. That doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense. There might be something a bit dodgy in this version of Illustrator that I'm using. Okay, so if we were to look at the paintbrush and what we're drawing, and we go to view outline, you'll see that they just look like lines. If I was to do it with a blob brush, and I can use my bracket keys to make it bigger, and I do this. Now it maybe look the same to you, but if we look at the outline, you'll see it's a blob. Can you see that? So as I draw more onto it, it just adds to it. So what you don't want to do is, if you're drawing with a paintbrush, you don't want to do lots of this. So you don't want to start painting stuff and going like this, or let's just paint this like this. You don't want to do that, because what happens is that it looks like this to the computer, and it has to remember all these points, which are a lot of points. However, if you're going to paint like that, use the blob brush, because the blob brush will paint and you'll see a different effect when we go to outline. And as you can see, probably a similar amount of points, but it's less messy. You know, you can see there's like a shape there. It's creating a shape, not a series of lines. So the blob brush is probably better. And likewise, once you've created a shape, you can add an outline to it. So we can add an outline to that. There we go. And if we wanted to, we can add a style to that outline as well, using one of the brushes here. So all the things that you create are able to be manipulated using the different effects that were inside Illustrator. So we'll leave it there for the time being, and then we'll move on to the next video.